Good late afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Design the Coursework Chat with Mr. Daniel. I want to talk to you about idea generation and 3 broad areas that you need to take note when you do your coursework, especially in the idea generation part. 3 broad areas. If you follow these 3 broad areas and you understand them, it will help you to present your idea generation portion clearly. Anybody who comes and look at your work will know immediately what the page is all about, what the intention is all about. And it will also help you to consider important features and important considerations early in the design process. For example, you will know what materials to use, what joints to use in the earlier stage rather than to leave it at the end of the idea generation or development stage. Now this is important because you do not want to spend time exploring useless and unnecessary features and methods just for the sake of populating your pages. Okay, we don't want to do that. And it will also help you to be able to work out proportions and size so you do not draw out of proportion ideas, solutions, which you will need to spend time troubleshooting, resizing, and that really will be a waste of time. So the 3 broad areas are: number 1, including a subtitle in your idea generation page. Now what is that? Now very commonly when you draw, if you finish one whole page of drawing and someone comes to you and look at your drawing, he or she may not be able to understand very quickly what the page is all about. You look through your drawings one at a time and then try to figure out what is going on. Now imagine if you have a subtitle. The subtitle will tell you exactly what the page is all about. It is like reading a storybook, right? If you read a chapter and if you do not look at the title of the chapter and you start reading, you'll be wondering what that chapter is all about. But as soon as you look at the title says Little Red Riding Hood visiting grandma. You know the following few pages will be about Red Riding Hood on her way to visit her grandma and not something else, right? So a subtitle in addition to the title is of course idea generation. And how do you get a subtitle? The subtitle is none other than the design specification. Now when you work on the idea generation, it is a good idea to work one design specification at a time, one at a time. So you should not have more than 2 to 3 functional design specifications. So work with one at a time. For example, the first one may be the design must hold 3 toothbrushes in an upright position, full stop. So by writing the statement holding 3 toothbrushes in a vertical manner that can stand vertically without falling, when you start drawing, you know exactly what to draw. Now this is a very common problem. Many students, when they start with a blank piece of paper, they write their title, idea generation, and then they sit there and say what to do next. You have the instructions, you already have, unless you have not drafted your design specification. They are already there. Most of the students, what do they do? They keep all the design specs in the folder, and then they start with a blank page and then try to figure out what to do next. The design specifications are checklists. They are instructions what the product must do. Bring them out, put them in front of you, copy the first one, and then work on it. The design specification, subtitles will give you the direction and to remind you what you should be drawing, what you should be creating, what you should be testing about. Holding 3 toothbrushes, can they work? Different ways to hold. How do we make them stand on its own? Different ways to make them stand on its own. And you'll be very focused. You will not be thinking about other things that may distract you from designing for specification number 1. Okay, so having a subtitle not only helps the teacher looking at work to understand what the page is all about, so that he can provide you with feedback and review quickly to tell you what you have gone wrong or what you can improve. Otherwise, your teacher may have to spend some time looking through and asking you questions. And it also helps you to be more precise in your drawing and in your thinking process. Okay, number 2, the second broad point that you must take note is to always remember and recall who your user is and what is the environment that the product will be placed in. Now this is very important because very often when the students start idea generation, they want to do a toothbrush holder, for example. They just draw any toothbrush holder, anything that comes to their mind. Or they pick any reference image from anywhere and start drawing. You can do that if you want to, especially if you have lots of time. If you have a lot of time to spare, by all means go ahead and do that. But I'm telling you, all this will be a waste of time. You want to be precise, you want to be accurate, you want to be focused. If you have the user in mind, if you have a child in mind, and you put it on paper and say this toothbrush holder that can hold 3 toothbrushes is going to be for kids 5 years old to 7 years old. And then when you start drawing, before you start drawing, you would probably like to do some shape borrowing from somewhere, get inspiration from somewhere. What image would you get? What product would you find? A very classic boxy toothbrush holder as a starting point? I wouldn't. Not sure about you. If my user is a kid and I know it very well, I would find things and I would think of ideas that are vibrant, colorful, cute, playful. You see the point? Many times and many students, when they do the idea generation, they just start drawing. They know they have a user. They stated it earlier on in the situation, in the design brief, for example. And then once they start idea generation, they forget everything about them. They also forgot that they have a design specification. And then on the blank piece of paper, gosh, now what do I do? You sit there for 2 hours until your teacher comes to you. Correct or not? So number 1, the subtitle will give you a direction. Will tell you what to do, to remind you again and again. And number 2, putting on paper and reminding yourself you have a user that's going to use the toothbrush holder or whatever that you are going to design, and you have an environment that the holder is going to be in. That will help you. The environment part will help you immediately lock in what are some possible materials. Okay, so you wouldn't be drawing a toothbrush holder using cardboard or paper in the bathroom. No, you won't. So immediately you know if it's for the bathroom, it will be a wet place. It's either plastics or wood. If you have wood, then you got to have something that can protect the wood from rotting, from moisture. You start thinking about that. You don't do it later. You can if you want to, but it is not efficient. Now, if you are thinking about the strategy of development, try to populate and make more pages. Okay, so when it is time to decide on materials, you bring in a ton of materials, put it on the page, and then you start taking and evaluating one at a time, including paper, diamond, all sorts of metals, and then finally you choose acrylic. Pure waste of time, okay? Pure waste of time. It is better for you to be focused. You know exactly what are some materials that is suitable, wood and acrylic, or maybe aluminium. So if you have decided and already know that these are the materials in advance, does that mean you will do less later? You cannot produce more pages later? No. The more focused you are, the more opportunity you have to evaluate and elaborate on the idea that you have. So you don't worry about the number of pages that you can produce. You will eventually produce enough pages, trust me. So by keeping in mind the user, it will help you to very quickly come up with possible, practical, useful design suitable for the user, the shape and the form. And having the environment early in mind in the design stage and keeping that in mind all the time will help you to determine the materials, the size, and the suitability, feasibility of the given material. And once you know the materials, you can work on the joints. So very often when a student they draw a box, for example, as a starter. They draw a box that looks like paper, just one line. Why? Because you do not know what material that may be. At the idea generation stage, it is also good for you to draw something with thickness. Many students draw without thickness. I cannot understand how a bag holder can be made of paper, you know. So draw thickness. How do you draw thickness? How thick you should draw? If you know that it's going to be acrylic to start, then draw a thin thickness representing acrylic. If you know that it's going to be wood as a starter, then your thickness will be thicker for the box. And then if it's wood, then you will begin to show some joints. You can start with a butt joint if you want to, you can develop it later. So the user and the environment will help you lock in the shape and the form and the direction of the design and the form. Colors not really, but the environment will help you think about the materials, suitability, and the joining methods in the early stage. Finally, point number three, items and hands or body parts. What do I mean by that? By items and body parts. Many students, when they draw a holder, for example, they draw a lot of holders for hours, for many pages. They evaluate the holder here and there, but nowhere you can find any toothbrush in the holder. You design a pencil holder, no pencil. You design a knife holder, no knife. You design a cotton bud holder, no cotton bud. How on earth do you evaluate your drawing? How on earth do you evaluate your solution when you don't have those things inside? You cannot tell if it's working. You cannot tell if the items are held properly. You cannot tell if they are secure, etc. No way. And if you do not have items in a product, you cannot work out the proportion. How big is the item? Or how big is the solution with respect to the item? You don't know. And there is also no way your teacher can help you to check if you drew them in proportion or what you have in your head is correct. So for example, if you draw a holder this big, and then you draw a toothbrush so small on top, maybe you want to hold 5. How big do you think your toothbrush holder will be? Huge! I talked about this in a previous video. Maybe I put a link below so you can have a look at that. When I talk about size and proportion, how ridiculous and how funny they are. So if you draw the holders and the objects and the items to hold, you give yourself an opportunity to think about the proportions and whether they look right or not. And number 2, hands and body parts. It is always good to include hands holding, interacting with the product that you are making. So that will give you the opportunity to work out proportions as well. And then it also gives you an opportunity to work out the best position for the hands, the best position for the holders, and whether it look right or not onto the product. Now you do not need to draw hands all the time. I know it's a very challenging thing to do, but what you can do is after a few variations of ideas, after a few iterations of ideas, on the final one which you think it works, which you think it may work, draw hands there to illustrate how it looks like. Another way to do that, if you are very bad at drawing hands, is to make a model. To make a model and then test it, hold it with the hand, take photos, paste it in the journal, and then you evaluate again. Now by making models and using hands, showing hands and items allows you again to work on the proportions and the size, and the suitability and the ergonomics of the design. So hands, body parts, cats or dogs, if you are making for cats and dogs, and the items. So that is point number 3. Okay, so as a recap, number 1 for idea generation, always have a subheading. That is not only just for you, but also for your teachers. So your teachers, when the teachers come and look at your design specification, your teacher will know exactly what the page is all about, and then he or she will be able to tell if you have gone out of points. But usually, if you can write your subtitle in front of you and remind yourself all the time, very difficult to go out of point and do nonsense. And number two, user and environment. When you design, always keep the user and environment in your head. Tattoo it inside there. Remind yourself, never lose sight of it. And number 3, remember when you draw a holder, design something, a bookshelf, please always draw how the books are put in. The different ways the books can be put in. The steps that the books are put in. Before, after. Before, after. Okay? So, items and objects, hands and body parts. That's the third one. Okay, I hope you understand what I'm trying to say. Now, you do not have to do all of them. If you find them useful, apply it in your journal. You don't have to believe everything I say, and you don't have to do everything I say. I'm just a regular dude who think about all these things all the time, and I just happen to have more than 2 decades of experience. So I'm just sharing what I think is best and what you can do and how you can make the best out of your time, so that you do not waste them and you can use and spend the remaining time for your other subjects, spend the remaining time to revise for the theory part of the course of the subject. Okay, that is all for now. If you like the video, please like, subscribe and share, and let me know in the comments below what you would like to hear and learn. Then I'll try to make the videos for you. Okay, bye bye.